This video was sponsored by Verve.
We are riders on a mission, action, kids in fun condition, prepare to count down rocket power.
What do you get when you cross a love for extreme sports with four rascal kids who want to have fun and not grow up anytime soon, spending their youth within a beach community? You get one of the last Nickelodeon shows to be associated with the 90s, Rocket Power. Going on for almost 5 years, spanning 4 seasons, 71 episodes, including TV movies, video games, soundtracks, and even a live tour. What happened to such a prominent television series? Well, we're not there yet. In a spare bedroom of a Hollywood apartment lies the married couple of Arlene Klasky and Gabor Csupo, the brains of a company that would be responsible for some of Nickelodeon's longest and most successful shows. The company initially worked on smaller, less risky projects like logo designs, TV show titles, and feature film trailers. Due to their success providing work for projects such as Eddie Murphy Raw, The Beastie Boys, Motari Academy, and The Tracy Ullman Show, the duo would expand into a new studio, gaining a reputation as one of the most innovating studios in Hollywood. Meanwhile, it's 1987. The Fox Broadcasting Company would have been operating for about a year now in its attempts to compete with the big 3 networks: the American Broadcasting Company, the Columbia Broadcasting System, and the National Broadcasting Company. Fox would ultimately struggle with its programming lineup, with several affiliate networks being disappointed, stating that Fox offerings were, quote, hampering viewership of their stronger syndicated slate. The 2 shows quoted often as having moderate success were Married with Children and The Tracy Ullman Show. The sketch comedy variety show would often feature animated segments, animated by the prominent up-and-coming studio, Klasky Csupo. The first 2 episodes shown animated segments called Dr. N. Godatu.
I have a patient coming in just 1 minute, but first I have to show you something. Look, I wore my slippers to the office. What was I thinking of?
The shorts followed the life of Dr. Janice N. Godatu, a calm doctor who would talk about her daily life to the camera. It was a very weird show, with a hard-to-pronounce name, pronounced
Dr. Janice Godatu.
The other collection of shorts airing on The Tracy Ullman Show featured a yellow family and their wacky situations together.
What is the mind? Is it just a system of impulses, or is it something tangible?
Relax. What is mind? No matter. What is matter? Never mind.
The reaction to The Simpsons was such a positive reaction that it began a climb for Fox as a whole, being the first Fox series under The Tracy Ullman Show to crack the top 30. Ranked at a 3-way tie for 29th place, it became one of the most popular segments of the show, so popular that in addition to ending the other animated segments on the show, The Simpsons would eventually receive its own weekly half-hour series, bringing Klasky Csupo alongside to produce the first 3 seasons of the show.
We're trying to really challenge the other cartoons out there, and I think that we do a fantastic job. We make the Smurfs look like Scooby-Doo.
Don't be a cow, but a different animation studio is going to be drawing Bart Simpson next season. The move ends a relationship with Los Angeles-based Klasky Csupo Animation that goes back to The Simpsons' beginnings as a short segment on The Tracy Ullman Show. Gabor Csupo, part owner of Klasky Csupo, said Gracie executives were miffed because he refused to comply with their demands for changes in the studio's operations. They asked me if they could bring in their own producer, and I said no, Csupo said. They wanted to tell me how to run my business. End quote. A source close to the program confirmed that Gracie executives have been unhappy with the producer Csupo assigned to The Simpsons, and said company also hoped to obtain better wages and working conditions for animators at Film Roman. Csupo says he expects to lay off all but 35 of the 110 animators who had worked on The Simpsons. Los Angeles Times. Klasky Csupo was relieved of one of their most notable clients on one of the most popular series on television. Luckily, they would come across a network that was also looking to produce animation, but for a younger demographic. Rather than animating the idea of another, Rugrats was created by Arlene and Gabor and produced under the company alongside Games Animation and Nickelodeon's own animation studio. The show followed the day-to-day lives of a group of toddlers, Tommy, Chucky, Phil and Lil, and Angelica, based off the antics of the couple's infant children.
There was a period after I had my second child that I decided I just want to stay home and take care of my kids, so I stayed home for about 15 months. I was fascinated that, my kids, one was, 14 or 15 months and the other one was almost 4. If babies could speak, what would they say?
The show started out with moderately high ratings, debuting in 1991. However, after a hiatus, Nickelodeon would air Rugrats multiple times per day. Due to such constant reruns, Rugrats received a boost in ratings, skyrocketing it into the hearts and minds of children everywhere. Popular stars such as Amanda Bynes, Steven Spielberg, and Daryl Sabara would openly state their enjoyment of the show, with Spielberg describing the show as a sort of, quote, TV Peanuts of our time. The show was seen internationally in over 76 countries, receiving an average of 26.7 million viewers every week, becoming Nickelodeon's longest running cartoon until a certain yellow sponge came along. Klasky Csupo was back on top, creating movies and even a spin-off from the success of Rugrats. Said animation company and Nickelodeon would work together, creating more shows, Ah Real Monsters in 1994 and The Wild Thornberrys in 1998. Due to their newfound success, they'd branch off to create Duckman for USA Network, Stress Eric for NBC, and Cento Baguito for CBS. Nickelodeon would enjoy a large amount of success in the animation department, having highly rated animated shows and movies, such as the Rugrats movie in 1998, which was Nickelodeon Movie's highest grossing animated movie until Rango in 2011. Closing out the millennium, Nickelodeon produced 2 animated series in 1999, one about a yellow sponge underwater and his nautical adventures, and one about 4 kids living on the shore who love extreme sports. An old archive post from EMI Online states, quote, Nickelodeon's president of production Kevin Kay will include, quote, Stray Dog, working title, a live-action series produced by Lynch Entertainment, Rocket Beach, an animated series from Nickelodeon and Klasky Csupo, and SpongeBob SquarePants, an animated series from Nicktoons Productions, end quote.
So when I had wound up with 2 boys, I just put them in every sport, They were so active. I just needed to put them somewhere where they could kind of work out their willies. And I guess the rollerblading and the skateboarding. And I just thought that this was the time to do something like that. So we would go down to Venice Beach a lot because of course, we're in Los Angeles, and they would take their bikes and their skateboards, and this is what kids are into. Of course, all their friends were into the same thing too.
Yeah.
So it was sort of their world. It became my world, and to please them, I would offer them the opportunity to do those things.
So what's Rocket Power exactly? TV.com describes the show as, quote, 4 friends who are addicted to action and extreme sports. Otto Rocket, his sister Reggie, and their pals Twister and Sam excel at just about every aggressive sport you can imagine. Their hometown of Ocean Shores, California is the ultimate place for a game of hockey, skating the halfpipe, or rollerblading on a sidewalk, end quote. There isn't much that can be found online on the show's production, which has led to rumors of the show being more of an executive creation, rather than one from a more free and artistic origin. In fact, of the shows created by Klasky Csupo, this one often is described very briefly, even on their own website, simply summarized in a sentence. However, as Sizzly Bacon puts it on the haiku section of Rocket Power's TV Tropes page, extreme sports kids in Ocean Shores, California. What else can be said? I began my binge actually on Verve, when I noticed that Nickelodeon was offering 90s cartoons for viewing. I didn't want to pass up that opportunity, and through my binge of Rocket Power, it actually inspired me to create this Rise and Fall. I enjoyed the ad-free nature of the app, alongside being able to watch it on my phone. I was also able to watch it offline, while out in places where my service isn't great, and even got into other shows offered by Verve, such as Bee and Puppy Cat, Cam Camp, Bunnicula again, and even that new Care Bears show. which may appear in my best of 2019 list. I even got to experience Rocko's Modern Life and Angry Beavers all over again, as I haven't went back to watch that series in years really. I've also been recommended other shows such as Harmon Quest, Season 3 specifically, and Are You Afraid of the Dark from Nixplat. I couldn't have done this rise and fall without Verve's help. And if you want to try it 30 days ad-free, use my link, verve.co/alphajay, ALPHAJAY, to get a 30-day ad-free trial of Verve Premium. It's a great service that has tons of great animation, all in one place that anyone can appreciate. To get a better understanding of Rocket Power, let's talk about the first episode, New Squid on the Block. It starts out with Reggie recording Otto and Twister for her zine. After a few wipeouts, Otto calls Twister a squid, which is supposed to represent his role within the group. It's given to new writers, who exhibit an unpredictable and unsteady writing style on account of them being new to the sport. You'll notice early on that the slang usage in the show is pretty high, and many terms are not in common use anymore.
Looks kinda short, and kinda round, and kinda pale.
Yes, this is Sam. Sam was not a friend of Otto, Reggie, and Twister growing up, and in fact at one point, they had a pretty rough start, especially Otto and Twister, but more on their treatment of Sam later. Sam's mother, while very overbearing, takes a back seat for the majority of the episode, letting Sam shine solo. However, before we get that, we get introduced to one reoccurring family within the community, the Stimpletons. Violet is the bright, bubbly, hospitable, and often oblivious one, whereas her husband Merv is very closed off, cranky, and almost always against the antics of the youth around him. When introduced to the kids around the neighborhood, they have a very bumpy start, but it shines greatly on their personality, how they approach this kid that they don't know. Otto is very driven to win, and only cares to meet the kid once he knows that Sam knows of hockey. Reggie, very level-headed and kind, connects with Sam immediately on the interest of computers. And well, Twister?
Bad people are gone now. You can go back to being a lame-o. Yo, Squid, lighten up. Yeah, you were new once.
He doesn't really approve much of Sam, and often teases him right in front of Otto and Reggie. Now this is interesting to me because Twister has an older brother, Lars, whom often bullies him, so you can somewhat see why his personality would be this way.
I stink, okay? Sam, wait! Guess it's back to just the three of us. A lot of good that does us. You squid.
Despite his friends repeatedly telling him to quit being harsh towards Sam, he'd keep this mentality, going into further episodes. However, the perception of Sam being no good for hockey would soon change once they realize how much of a great goalie he is, with Twister being the only one to not approve of this. The show also creates a sporty atmosphere pretty heavily, showing that the episode will not go on too long without showing or referencing a sport. Getting towards the big game, despite winning on Lars, Twister's older brother, and his team of older kids, they'd lose the puck temporarily before Sam, due to his short experience with Merv Snimpleton earlier, knows how to retrieve the puck from said mailbox. Despite Otto and Reggie being happy about this, Twister would only turn his attitude on Sam around upon hearing the news.
Think we got ourselves a new squid. What? Oh yeah, now Sam's a squid.
And look at that. Sam becomes the new Squid, leading Twister to feel much better about him. This leads me to assume the reason Twister was so upset at Sam was because he feared that Sam, the new kid, would surpass him and never have to deal with being the Squid. And now that he is, Twister can get into the banter that Otto and Reggie generally have the advantage on, and he does take advantage of that quite quickly. This leads into the start of their friendship, and the start of many adventures. So let's see what ends up happening when we talk about The Rise. There are two selling points of the show that I want to center in on, and that's the characters and the culture. Due to the episodic nature of the show, we spend many episodes getting to know the four main characters, as well as the major characters around them. However, the show takes great pride in making sure that the sports and beach/Hawaiian aspect of the show remains at the forefront of their storytelling.
How important was it for you guys, again, to bring that authenticity? It was a very authentic show. You had Tony Hawk on there. You had, all these things that showed, again, this very different world.
I mean, the fact that we could get Tony Hawk, I think he was on one of the shows, was quite amazing. But again, it was just the business our studio kept growing. So we're not just sort of like jaw dropped, and then we just kept moving on. We didn't have time to think about it.
Yeah.
With that, we see many sports within the show, from field hockey, to skateboarding, to snowboarding, to surfing, and all of the extreme sports in between. However, in the midst of that lies a Hawaiian/Pacific leaning that you see often with characters such as Tito, who brings his wisdom and love of sharing Hawaiian folklore and phrases. To understand why people love rocket power, the characters and their culture is a great start. Let's start with the leader, Otto.
I got another check minus in classroom citizenship.
Are you kidding me? Dad's been all over you about your grades.
TV.com describes Otto as, quote, the leader of the group. As they say in the episode All About Sam, he's a total action guy. He can be selfish and overly competitive at times, and even more unreliable, but he tries to be a good friend, and more often than not, he does a pretty good job at it. He's also rad on wheels, weaves and powder, and he plays a mean game of hockey. End quote. He serves as the leader of the group, for better or for worse. It can get as bad as episodes like Night Prowlers, where said rivalry with Lars gets to a point where they have to sneak out at night just to challenge him. Even though his friends would love to support him, a hockey game at midnight that only Otto really seems to care about seems like a little bit of a stretch, especially after his treatment of Reggie in the match.
Yeah, well you guys play like girls.
Excuse me?
You know what I mean.
No, I don't.
We've creamed you before, and we'll cream you again.
That sounds an awful lot like a challenge, Rocket Dork.
The 90s and early 2000s were full of friendships like this, where a lot more arguments and fighting happens. When depicted in media like this, it's easy for people of today to feel like the bonds here are not as strong as modern day cartoon friendships, where if a pair of friends had arguments, even a quarter of the amount of rocket power, the show would set time aside to iron out the issues, rather than sweeping them under the rug, like Reggie and their dad Raimundo do with Otto. Otto gets grounded often, in fact, he even gets punished in this episode. Yet his personality stays the same, which shows that the punishments are just good on paper. In fact, as I'll show you later in this video, he actually gets worse in spite of his constant negative reinforcement. Getting back to friendships, we had friendships in other shows that had that level of arguments and back and forths that appears all around that time. From Mac and Blue, to Billy and Mandy, and all of the kids in Jimmy Neutron. That roughness may have created some mean shows, as all of the shows implied earlier have a varying level of meanness to them. However, of them, Rocket Power has a lot more back and forth between friends. It may create a false sense of friendship, built more out of closeness and convenience rather than compatibility, or it may build an even stronger bond that is battle-tested and shows loyalty and a deep understanding of one's character.
The bottom line is, bro, you have a nasty little habit of speaking up for everyone.
This is true, as not only does he convince the gang to sneak out during the night in Night Prowlers, he'd convince Sam to skip school during Snow Day, and he'd convince Twister to blow off school to practice skateboarding in Mr. B is in the House. I feel like the absolute worst offender of Otto's behavior has to be in the episode D is for Dad. In this episode, we had Otto getting a D in citizenship, which means that his father wouldn't let him go on the big family trip coming up. However, rather than listening to Reggie when she says,
"Tell Dad and the weekend is ruined,"
and even when Reggie would later restate that she wants Otto to not say a word until after the trip,
it's simple. Bad grades equals no trip.
he goes on to not only tell his father about the grade, after hearing that his dad got a D from the health inspector over the obstruction of a trash can, he'd take it a step further.
It was just in citizenship. It's not like it counts in real life or anything.
Every single grade counts, young man, you know that.
Yeah, what about your bad grade?
That was a mistake.
This part confuses me incredibly because it doesn't make any sense for Otto to do this, other than that the story needs it. He doesn't have that many episodes where he flat out comes clean. He has episodes like Night Prowlers, Snow Day, Rad Rover Come Over, where he actually goes out of his way to not tell his dad anything, and come clean only when it's impossible to keep up with the lie. He actually has no reason to do what he does in this episode besides the plot. Potentially, I can see the story trying to be put in a way where structurally, he's doing it because he wants to bond with his dad over both of them getting low grades. But that doesn't mean anything, because he only knew that once he got home. He wanted to do it before he got home. And what creases me about this is even though Otto is in the wrong, even though Otto clearly disrespects his dad, even though the trip doesn't stop anyone else but Otto, and even though Otto is supposed to quote, learn his lesson at the Simpletons, he ends up having the trip anyway, after everyone realizes that Otto is the life of the party. So Otto learns nothing, and why should he? It's clear that he is the most exciting member of the group. He's the most exciting character on the show. I can't sit here and tell you that an Otto-less episode of Rocket Power would be just as fun, because Otto takes the most initiative and the most risk, and for a cartoon involving extreme sports, it's no wonder why he stands out. He acts out, gets in trouble, learns nothing, and is still such a valuable person to the foundation of Rocket Power. This annoying kid carries the show on his back. So why would he need the change? Even though I have a lot of negative things to say about Otto, he's one of the best characters the show has going for itself.
So, what's a two-eyed squisher look like anyhow?
Like you! Look up!
Twister, or Maurice, the real name he goes by, former Squid and current squad member in the gang, knowing the Rocket family, at least significantly longer than Sam, being of Hispanic origin, he lives within the neighborhood, alongside his older brother Lars, who generally serves as a main antagonist towards him, or Otto, or the whole gang. TV.com describes Twister as, quote, Otto's best bro. He's totally rad with his video camera, which he uses to tape all of the extreme stunts that he, Otto, and Reggie do. He's a little bit slow on the uptake, but in a totally sweet, well, the girls on the site think that, and comical way. You may have picked up on a few traits of his, being the slowest in the pack, being pretty mean, and, well, his love of recording. For example, you have the sister episode to the first episode we talked about, Down the Drain. In that episode, the gang foolishly assigns Twister to the task of placing the pool drain in a place where all the water can drain out nicely, and he doesn't take into account why his placement is a bad idea, leading to the Rocket home's basement flooding.
You turned our basement into an aquarium! Stop yelling at me! It's the Squid's fault! Me?
Shirking the blame onto Sam is not only something he does often, but a reflection on how Twister views Sam, even after the label of Squid was transferred over to him. Many fans of Rocket Power would note that Twister originally was written to have at least some common sense, and again be the slowest of the pack. However, in later episodes,
like if there was some kind of super rad dog contest thing we could put him in.
You mean like if we entered him in the Ocean Shores Extreme Dog Competition?
Yeah, if only there was something like that happening.
he's actually full-blown stupid most of the time, and he's the clearest case of flanderization. In many episodes, such as the initial fight in Night Prowler, you see that Twister and Lars have a very rocky relationship, with Lars being super mean to the younger kids in the community, and exploiting Twister's very gullible and superstitious attitude. However, this isn't always the case. You have episodes such as the Great Sandcastle Race, where after begging and pleading with his brother to help protect the sandcastle, he eventually gives in, only because he prefers them over the Shoobies.
What's a shoobie? You're.
Speaking of Shoobies, basically from what I gathered, Shoobies are non-locals who flock and take up much of the space of the boardwalk and beach, generally classified as wearing shoes most of the time. However, a greater example of the relationship they have is in Escape from Lars Mountain, where Twister decided to get revenge on his brother for pranking him for the umpteenth time, by staging his own death.
He's my little brother. I mean, just because it's more fun to be mean to him than it is to be nice, doesn't mean I don't care about him.
It's clear that if he went too far, Lars would feel guilt, and would never want to actually harm or finish off Twister, in the way that it's implied here. However, of the main four, I can't say that Twister is my favorite, and oftentimes his attitude brings nothing positive to the show. I can't say that like Otto, he brings something to the show that the episodes would lose a ton of that wow factor for. In fact, he sort of just goes along with Otto's plan most of the time. I did notice, like in episodes such as Otto 3000 and Reggie in the Net, he has a subtle love of video recording, which I guess is supposed to differentiate him from Otto, but oftentimes, he's just a less abrasive Otto, who doesn't have that manipulative power to get what he wants. His treatment of Sam is probably the highlight of his character. It gets downright disgusting. And the best episode to show this is the episode Secret Spot. The episode revolves around Shoobies and their invasion of the beach, leading into Otto and Reggie going to the secret spot of the beach that the Rocket family has kept secret for years. Sam ends up needing to know to tell his mom, and Twister ends up needing to know because, Well, because he wants to know, that's really it. He doesn't really need to know. Unfortunately, due to coincidence or poor creative skills, Lars ends up getting the location out of Twister, and Sam believes that he accidentally leaked it while asking his mom, who now only after getting to the location now wants the location of where her son is going to be again. It's not like an overprotective mother such as her would ask far beyond that point or anything. So because Twister and Sam are under the presumption that they spilled the secret, when Lars and his gang attempt to reach the secret spot, because Sam is honest, he spills that this may be his fault for leaking it in public, and Twister, who is well aware of exactly who did it, puts the blame squarely on Sam. However, the gang learns later on that it was actually Twister who led Lars to the secret spot, and Sam had nothing to do with it.
You spilled the beans after laying the blame on me?
That's about as low as it gets.
Even lower.
Well, since this is a typical 90s Nickelodeon relationship, they won't dive into this much, rather opting to sweep this under the rug, along with the many other examples, and keep the toxic nature of their friendship in the air. So whether it's tagging along with his friends, getting in trouble with his brother, being a poor man's comic relief, or messing with Sam, Twister provides his level of engagement within the group, and represents a part of what makes Rocket Power.
Where is your bathing cap, young lady? Here.
Free bathing caps.
Reggie is the girl of the group, and I would have more to say if there was more to offer. This comes with all the traits that girls in media usually get around this time when surrounded by their guy friends. They're usually the responsible one, and when you also tag the fact that Reggie is Otto's older sister, she often nags him to do the right thing. She also has more interest than Otto, because responsible girl, and TV.com describes Reggie as Otto's older sister by 2 years. She's awesome at sports, and at times she can be as competitive as her younger brother. She can be a little bossy sometimes, but she really doesn't mean to be. She is mostly the one who keeps Otto down to earth when he gets a little bit too self-centered, and there are times where she acts as his conscience. So there's a lot more to this action-loving girl athlete than what she can do with a skateboard, a surfboard, a hockey stick, and a laptop. Getting back to Down the Drain, rather than looking at it as an example of the frequent bad judgment calls that come, let's look at the premise of the episode. It revolves around the simpletons giving Reggie, and by extension Otto, Twister, and Sam, the responsibility of taking care of the house, while Merv gets anger management treatment. Obviously, Otto and Twister just want to use the pool. However, Reggie keeps a firm grasp on those two specifically, because while she isn't a mood killer, her tolerance for letting things get out of control is extremely lower than Otto, probably only rivaled by Sam's cautious and anxious nature. So knowing that Reggie is more responsible than Otto, you can see why they butt heads a lot. And Reggie gets treated poorly sometimes. In the episode Reggie and Annette, Reggie has to prepare for volleyball tryouts tomorrow. And feeling as less than 24 hours is not enough time to prepare for volleyball, she turns to her friends, asking them to help her out on something that's important to her.
This is my chance to play on the same team as Sherry and Trish. So it's important to me. And I can't believe you guys, after all the times I helped you out. Name one time.
Although she'd end up subtly getting them back with her rough playstyle, it does act as a secret dose of medicine, treated specifically to Otto, who is well known to be a puck or ball hog. This is actually one of my favorite episodes involving Reggie, as she shows that while she enjoys spending time with her crew, she has outside interests that they may not share, and wants to pursue them anyway. She'd also show this worry for her public reputation in episodes such as Happy Loud to You Out. She's also incredibly loyal to her family and their business. When Otto went and got a new board in Otto 3000, Reggie would consistently show a harsh disapproval of her brother's actions. In fact, Raymundo, who practically runs the business, was less harsh on Otto, for his disloyalty anyway. However, this shows you how much Reggie loves her family, and it's a subtle touch. Being the girl, you know they have to play around with her perception a lot, seeing as though she is, or is very close to being a tomboy, and you know that girly girls would never approve of this behavior, so that whole lovely dynamic is covered in Ice Queens, where Reggie is consistently being ragged on by Twister's cousin, Cleo.
Ice hockey? You actually like chasing a little piece of rubber around with a stick?
She'd continue this behavior, getting snow in her goggles accidentally causing her to miss a shot, and then commenting that she doesn't appreciate fine art, disrespecting Reggie in front of her friends, even after trying to be nice sometimes.
You smell like the inside of a knee pad.
Oh, and spinning around like some wind-up toy is more girlish? Ugh!
What makes this even more frustrating is that her friends never pull Cleo aside and equally tell her to stop. They only tell Reggie to stop, even in the cases where Cleo clearly started disrespecting her and Reggie is only on the fence. It's a pretty infuriating episode at times, not even getting into the ending, which is even more confusing. They decide to make a pact to see which is harder, hockey or ice skating. You've seen this episode before, and you probably expect Cleo to suck at hockey, not understanding the teamwork and speed aspect, and then Reggie, inversely, to suck at Nope. This is the only part of this cliched story that they change, and it's a fundamental mistake. You see, the purpose of two characters failing when they go into each other's shoes is because you take into account their inexperience and ignorance in a topic, and it teaches the easy lesson of just because you think something looks easy or unimportant, you never really know until you go into that person's shoes. By having them both compete effortlessly in each other's areas of expertise with no practice on either end and a very minimal and slightly ignorant misunderstanding of each other's passions, you're reaffirming their opinions on the matter and on the whole disrespecting both activities. Even though they would gain a newfound respect for each other, it's a fundamental error in the story, because why would they respect each other? If what they thought about the other person's sport was actually true, they should be arguing that they were in the right, and the other person's sport wasn't that difficult. On the whole, Reggie is the girl, whether that means being responsible, being the mature one, being the nagging one. She's the most balanced of the characters, with outside interests and a broader array of motivations.
Get out and make some new friends. Tell them about your good grades. But I was gonna spend the next 11 years in front of the TV.
Sam, current Squid and newest member of the group, hails from Kansas. TV.com describes Sam as, quote, probably the least extreme of the group, but that doesn't make him any less awesome. He's Reggie's best bro. He helps her publish her zine on his laptop. Sam is pretty much the brains of the Rocket gang, but it's his fear of risk that helps to keep the gang from going too far. Calling him the brains of the group, while accurate, would be a little bit of a misnomer. Yes, he's the brains, but a better label would be the nerd. The reason I use that term is because that's what the show uses. Anytime Sam, and to a lesser extent Reggie, uses a higher level of vocabulary or show any prominent form of intelligence, the show, and by that I mean Otto and Twister, bring them back down to their level by teasing them. It was, and still is, just not as much, a common practice of friendships. In fact, once again, going back to Down the Drain, it was their treatment of Sam which led to him getting angry enough to threaten to drain the pool and supposedly ruin their fun. It's just that to Otto, he saw draining the pool as a great idea and not a threat. I reckon back to one of my favorite tiny moments that involves Sam.
Squid, lifeguards are lame.
Yeah, well, I think I like being lame.
You go, Sammy.
What Otto calls lame, Sam thinks is cool, and it's one of those moments where he acknowledges that it's okay if Otto doesn't like the things that he likes, because to him, it's fun. His different perception of fun would come into play during episodes such as Welcome to the Club, where while the other three crew members are completely disinterested in the task, Sam would find them to be entertaining and provided a refreshing contrast to another played out episode. However, it wouldn't be a dissection unless I spoke about the treatment of Sam. As a Squid, he generally gets it the worst out of the four. It doesn't help that he's overly cautious and not as athletic as his peers. I've talked about how Otto got Sam into trouble in Snow Day, or how Twister threw Sam under the bus in Secret Spot, but neither are as bad as Reggie and Annette. While I did talk about how Otto and Twister basically had to go through a big argument just to help out Reggie, mind you, Reggie is Otto's older sister, that doesn't even compare to the treatment of Sam in that episode. So the side plot in that episode is that Otto and Twister really need to get a project done to help out their grade, but they opt not to help out Sam with the project, basically having him do it all himself, but them take the credit.
Who am I more afraid of, Reggie or the Squid? And don't forget, There's no I in group.
Going on a bit of a tiny tangent, they'd also do this to a lesser level in the coincidentally named Fall and Rise of Sam, where because Reggie is the only kid who seems to treat Sam decently consistently at least, she's the only one who teaches Sam how to finally surf. Otto and Twister just tease and make fun of him, which makes you realize that in many of these episodes, that 90s and early 2000s relationship between kids, it's really apparent and it becomes really hard to see why they were friends. Well, that's just how they are. I'm not saying that Sam's treatment here is correct, or that a kid should have to go through half of the stuff that he goes through, but I can't say that this was worse than any of the other dynamics of its time.
I'm going home to change, and I'm taking my hot dog cooker with me.
Our hot dog cooker?
And fix that explosion thing!
Now the episode kind of gets it correct, when Sam truly threatens to take all the credit, and make Twister and Otto essentially have to test out his hot dog cooker, eating to near nauseous levels. But it doesn't seem to make me feel any better knowing that this is going to happen again, over and over. I do enjoy Sam. His personality complements Reggie. He has a tiny arc that he goes through, and this may be an unpopular opinion, but his mom rocks. However, he will always be bogged down with lame nerd jokes, which gets worse as the season goes on. And the fact that he'll always be a squid, he'll be teased into oblivion. It's a shame, really. So with these established characters and their focus on sports, it has a solid direction. Even with a few glaring problems, the show managed to get past its first season, getting 3 more. The show even had multiple games come out around it, several specials, including one about a racing extreme sports competition, about cheating and family favoritism, and New Zealand culture, and in other TV movies, a music soundtrack alongside a tour, Maximum Rocket Power Live, which you wouldn't give to a show if it didn't have decent ratings. So what went wrong? Well, let's talk about The Fall. The fall of Rocket Power is similar to pineapple on pizza. Tons of people have an opinion on it, but only a fraction of those actually try to understand what their own opinion is. I went through Toon Zone, now called Anime Superhero, to understand exactly what people were thinking to an extent around the time. I came across very little posts talking about Rocket Power, rather more people talking about Invader Zim, SpongeBob, anything that isn't Rocket Power. There was a talkback thread where people talked about the recent episodes of the show, saying things such as,
I know what you're thinking. Rocket Power? Roll eyes. It's gonna suck.
The replies followed as so.
I doubt anyone will. I don't need to reserve my judgment. Rocket Power is bad. They canceled Zim and continued this crap? No thanks. And with annoying characters that refuse to change? No way. Thankfully, I do not watch Nickelodeon as much anymore.
Rocket Power? More like Rocket Stupid, am I right? Yeah. I'm such a witty beast.
Rover, you don't get the fact that no one cares about Rocket Power, do you?
Come on. I've seen enough whining in these threads. If you don't watch it, don't like it, to the point of whining about how awful you think it is, don't add to the talkback. I've seen rude posts, flame bait, posts that don't even pertain to the show itself, just asking stuff like, you don't get the fact that no one cares about Rocket Power, do you? It doesn't really belong in the talkback, and I'm not going to let it slide. Simply by posting to make fun, ask the same question over again, you're just showing some interest. So let's see some useful posts, people.
And this gem here, which I couldn't pass up.
Oh god, why won't this crap die? I don't even need to watch these episodes. I know what they're gonna be about. Script below.
OMG, like, dudes, did you see that? I'm like so awesome.
Way to go, Otto.
Says something completely irrelevant and stupid.
Oh, please. It was just a...
Just a...
Reggie's right, Otto. Your superhuman capabilities could far surpass blank.
Shut up, Squid.
You just nearly killed me. However, I'll still remain your friend because I suck.
2 people getting in an argument about something incredibly stupid.
Fine. I don't need you.
I don't need you either.
Lungs are the only human organ that can float on water.
Shut up.
Shell Shack. Otto's there.
Hey, little cuz. What is te matter?
I got in a fight with Reggie/Twister. Notice how it's never Sam. Am I supposed to read that? I don't know.
A fight? Otto.
Dad, I'm like, sorry.
Otto, fights are for shoobies. Of course, not that they ever did anything to us, but we'll continue to criticize them because they don't serve thus making them either.
Yeah, I know, but why?
Well, as the ancient Hawaiians said, if your name is Otto, You're an immature idiot who has an insanely large ego.
Gasp, you're right!
The two apologize.
Well, I'm glad I don't have my ego anymore. Of course, we're gonna forget about this in the very next episode, and I'll still be in... Hey guys, let's go surf and make fun of... Shoobies.
Yeah.
It's clear to say that Rocket Power wasn't exactly a critically acclaimed show. However, while Toon Zone users in general hold a very negative viewpoint of the show, I go to places like IMDb, and there's positive reviews all around. I can't say the show was hated by most kids when it aired, because there are people who connected with it. However, there was a much larger hatedom for this show compared to its peers. Another factor that contributed to its downfall was the fact that it struggled to break through just being a cartoon. When you look at SpongeBob and Rugrats, that really broke through for Nickelodeon, gaining theatrical releases and generally just being popular for the mainstream. Rocket Power simply could not do so. Remember that tour they did that I mentioned? I dug up an old Angel Fire website that read as so: Ocean Shores is celebrating its first annual Madtown Extreme Games, and the two best teams in town are going head to head in an extreme extravaganza. Otto, Reggie, Twister, and Sam are the Shore Shack Sharks, and they're squaring off against Lars's gang, the Raging Riptides. The losers have to clear out of Madtown Park and find someplace else to skate. Harsh. Who will win the battle for Madtown Park? I don't know much about the event, but I am sure it exists. It had different events within it. Since there's a lack of coverage for the event, it's hard to confirm the success of the event. When it comes to the fall, it's hard for me to not talk about the potential issues someone may have outside of the sporty nature or the character's likability. The general aesthetic of the show is different than the shows around it, which isn't inherently a bad thing. Uniqueness and individuality is something to admire within a show. However, just because a show is different doesn't mean that that difference is good. Aesthetically, it focuses on these rough-looking character styles, unique camera angles that may rival some of Invader Zim, and this in-your-face graphic that emphasizes a certain word or phrase, while fast-paced video assets bounce around, and while said text has its own effects. It's safe to assume that the show went for something that was cool, by trying to emulate what the staff thought was cool. Let's take the theme song for example. The song has about 3 musical parts to it: the guitar riff that plays a few times, the vocals, and this other guitar riff, which serves as the music that accompanies the episode title cards. Between these 3 things is a cacophony, overproduced beats layered with tons of effects, and a switch of drum breaks. And that's not counting when the song actually takes a break in the middle of it. Between the overproduced audio and the overproduced video, it emulates the grandiose way computer effects really wanted to take advantage of the over-your-top, in-your-face graphics. And when you look at shows around it, Hey Arnold, it has a simple but great melody that you remember. SpongeBob, it's very simple, it's very focused. Cat Dog, again, very simple, very focused. Doug, Rugrats, Invader Zim, Angry Beavers, Ren and Stimpy, they all had one focus, and that focus is what made the song memorable. Rocket Power has 3 things going on at once, as if they smushed 3 parts together. The general aesthetic of the show was overproduced compared to its peers, which probably didn't help with it becoming dated much faster than some of the shows around it, like Invader Zim or Hey Arnold. I guess the Rocket family didn't really have much going for it by itself. Speaking of, you probably noticed that Mama Rocket has yet to come up in any of the episodes that we've seen. Well, we have just a TV special to talk about this: Rocket Power, Island of the Menehune. The episode is essentially an hour-long version of a 15-minute episode. Although it goes into aspects such as Twister being pranked and messed with by a girl because she likes him, or Sam picking up a cursed item, Beth from Total Drama style, or even the main plot of Otto and Reggie being mad at their father for the lack of attention, it's not something that the show hasn't offered already. A previous special, Race Across New Zealand, would premiere in 2002. That special had Raymundo not give Reggie any attention in favor of Otto, to which he'd apologize in the end. Here, he'd not give Reggie attention again, but in addition, Otto as well, because of a new girl. At least a new girl to Otto and Reggie.
No, Alani. You're not interested in meeting anybody, remember? I lied. Didn't mean a word of it.
Aloha, Raymundo. Welcome back.
So Raymundo and Noelani know each other before Otto and Reggie were born. We end up seeing a flashback confirming this, where a random guy pranks Raymundo and Tito for sleeping on the beach. That girl next to Neolani is Danielle Rocket. Her death is unexplained during the show. She could have been killed while surfing, or an illness, or as some theorize, a poodle, which explains Raymundo's irrational fear towards them. However, I have a theory, an alpha theory, as to what happened to Danielle, and I have some reasons to back it up. We'll see a horrible memory of Neolani and a blonde surfer struggle to surf on such violent waves, which only Neolani would survive. Also throughout the special, Raymundo ends up being irrationally afraid of Otto and Reggie going out towards the waves, and rather opting to spend time together doing something safer, alongside Neolani. I think that blonde surfer was actually supposed to be Danielle, and that this is an animation error. It wouldn't be the first time Klasky Csupo would make a grand error, and with it being her and not this random surfer, the story actually makes a lot more sense. You see, we see Danielle Rocket in an earlier memory, so it makes sense to see her in a later memory, which explains her death. Neolani and Danielle were close, which is why Raymundo and Neolani are close. It also explains why the guy who lets his kids do a lot of dangerous stuff would start to flip his opinion on said sports really quickly in this TV special. Maybe Nickelodeon wouldn't have wanted the show to focus on Danielle's death, seeing as she's a significant absence, and that focus on death wouldn't be in Nickelodeon's best interest, at least according to their views at the time. So it was easier to say a random surfer than to imply that a main character's mom's death is somewhere in the ballpark here. However, if you were to swap characters, it makes too much sense for my mind not to be changed. The only important part of this episode lore-wise to keep in mind is that Raymundo and Neolani would really talk about getting married, to Reggie and Otto's disapproval, especially because Raymundo keeps ditching them to hang out with her, a woman they don't know. When they all do hang out together, they're usually doing a safer and more boring activity. Things would heat up when Otto nearly dies from being underwater too long.
Noelani warned you about that. Why didn't you listen to her?
Oh, I didn't know I was supposed to take orders from her now. Besides, she probably thinks brushing your teeth is dangerous.
Normally, I would describe this as another mean comment from Otto, but he's justified in feeling this way. This time. He has no connection to this woman, and he already doesn't like her, and it's Otto, so he's not going to listen. I get that to us, the audience, that doesn't mean he should kill himself. But I can't see Otto liking Neolani as nice and supportive of a woman she appears to be in this episode. So those large, violent waves I mentioned that happen in the memory, well, they're a common thing to occur while they're vacationing. And when Otto and Reggie go against their father's wishes and surf despite him, because they all originally planned to do so, Otto and Reggie nearly get swept away into an underwater cave before Raymundo and later Neolani save them.
I didn't handle this Noelani situation very well. But the truth is, I haven't felt this way about anyone since...
Mom?
Yes.
Although Raymundo and Neolani would remain a romantic interest, it is actually the end of this episode where we tie up all loose ends. Neolani spends time with Reggie and Otto, explaining that she's not a stranger, and that she was actually great friends with Otto and Reggie's mother. Tito, who plays a backseat to many episodes, including this one, also gets an apology from Raymundo for also being flaky with him. However, the biggest announcement is...
Are you saying what I think you're saying?
My best man at the wedding?
Yes, Raymundo and Neolani would end up arranging plans to marry. However, that would be settled in the last episode of season 4 and the finale, the big day.
Ancient Hawaiian saying, a wise man cherishes today, cause tomorrow he could meet the fiery end at the bottom of a volcano.
And, well, you can see why Tito takes a backseat in many episodes. Tito is actually a great character, and I don't really have a list of bad episodes that he played a major role in, as far as why it's bad. His ancient Hawaiian wisdom and laid-back nature really made him out to be a well-rounded and unique character on his own, but also a great unofficial second dad to Otto and Reggie. It seems absurd to say, but his former quotes weren't this horrible, and it's clear his character also went through slight flanderization. So the finale revolves around the incoming events between Neolani and Raymundo's wedding, and the upcoming Zero Gravity Zone competition. Things pick up where they left off, at Island of the Menehune, where Neolani and Raymundo's children Otto and Reggie got off to a bad start. However, it's all different now.
Noelani's cool. It's just gonna be one more place at the table, right, Reg?
Yep, nothing's gonna change.
Except that's wrong. That's completely wrong. Everything changes immediately. Otto and Reggie get tasked with helping with wedding arrangements. The wedding date gets moved towards the date of the Zero Gravity Zone competition, and we have to deal with her.
Ma'am, you don't have to push the button over and over. Once will do.
Sorry, I thought it was broken.
Now, what did you want?
Nothing, I just thought it was broken.
I've never met such an infuriating elderly woman in animation before. If you want to know why the finale can be unwatchable to some, it's her. She'd appear in a previous special, but she was incredibly subdued, only appearing for a short amount of time. Here, she's the spotlight. She's at the forefront. Her character is incredibly annoying and overbearing, and when you compare it to Sam's mother, who can also be annoying and overbearing, the difference sticks out bigger than her nose, and that's coming from a panda who has a large nose, one that YouTube hides well. Sam's mother comes from a place of extreme care and anxiety for her son's well-being. Momi's overbearing nature comes from a place of arrogance and a repeated pattern of no one calling her out when she oversteps her boundaries. Yes, she's the one in the family who no one ever calls out on their behavior, despite everyone feeling the exact same feeling on what's going on. What can be an exciting, sweet, and kind of deep finale turns into an annoying, cliched finale because of the fact that she's pushed to the forefront as the overbearing, annoying mother who clearly gets in the way of her daughter and soon-to-be son-in-law's best interests.
Little Ray Rocket! You better be careful. Ancient Hawaiian spirits got eyes everywhere.
I do get that Rocket Power is a cool, extreme show, and showing emotions of love, it's only reserved for apologies throughout the show for the most part. But when other shows around you are pulling the emotion card well, it makes me think, yes, SpongeBob was a happy show, but that doesn't mean that it's happy all the time. This finale came out in 2004, around the same time that the first 3 seasons of SpongeBob already aired. I don't need to go through these seasons to find when SpongeBob was sad, or when SpongeBob was mad, or when SpongeBob was inspired, or when SpongeBob was determined. Rocket Power has these emotions, but only in one form. They are only mad when they fight. They are sad and then they apologize immediately after. This is a show for kids, but I couldn't imagine wanting to see the same episode over and over, just iterated, unless I really like the concept of the show. So yes, as I said before, Otto and Reggie have to be assistants for the wedding, under their father's love-struck orders. This means that they have to suffer a lot for the majority of the episode. Otto takes it especially rough, crying into his bed.
Noel, Lonnie, what day should we have the wedding? I don't know, Ray. Maybe we can have it Saturday, so Otto, who the entire world revolves around, will be put out.
That's exactly how it must have gone down.
Things would ramp up when Otto remembers that it's his only chance to learn and skate with Shaun White, also known as the Egg. This episode does get a few things correct, such as the fact that Reggie isn't ready to call Neolani her mother, and there's a good scene revolving around this.
She can't carry the cake alone, your mom.
She is not my mom, and she'll never be my mom, okay?
Okay, let me try that again. That lady wants you to help her carry the cake.
She'd overhear their argument about this, leading into Neolani heading back to the airport to not break up the family with this wedding. The main issue I have with this plot is that it really does want to be a finale and be special and try to do something memorable. This is a finale that aims to do something substantial after having a run where it did very little but shoved sports in my face. Yes, sports are great. I love to watch the World Cup, the big football game during Thanksgiving, even MMA or wrestling. But what makes these events great to watch is that you're emotionally invested in the product. 2 random people showing up to an MMA battle is not the same as a rivalry that's built up over the years between 2 great competitors. I get that Reggie is unsure of what she wants moving forward. However, Otto is not.
She's on her way back to Hawaii. If we leave now, maybe we can catch her at the airport and explain.
But it's the final round. I'm gonna win. I can feel it.
Otto has stayed the exact same selfish douchebag that he was since episode 1. And this episode goes out of its way to try to make me believe that because Reggie wants Neolani here, that Otto would give up the Zero Gravity Zone competition. A fantastic and rare competition where he would meet Shaun White. He's not doing that for Neolani and his father. They don't have that bond. And to sit there and try to throw up this garbage of Reggie walking away and Otto deciding the right thing to do. It's the biggest stretch I've covered in this series. I don't believe that Otto would try to save the wedding. Otto, the character that you guys built up throughout this entire series, would actually blow off Reggie, complete the competition, possibly meet up with Shaun White, and then try to make things better next time. Otto is always reset to be the selfish jerk that his character is, so I would never in a million years believe for a second that the way that this finale ends is the way that it should. Yes, Otto gives up the competition. Yes, Otto saves the wedding. And they wed. But at least Raymundo and the others are happy, in a sense. They take one last picture before implying that there is more memories to come, and the Rocket family and friends. And that's how Rocket Power ends. What happened to Rocket Power? Well, a combination of a poor start quality-wise when it came to harsh characters and barely believable friendships, but also a combination of bulk, run-of-the-mill episodic cliches and extreme sports that tried to grasp onto what was cool and it failed. But what I think killed Rocket Power the most is that Klasky Csupo's expertise was with the weird, the wacky, and the ugly. Those old Simpsons shorts were ugly and weird. Rugrats? Ugly and wacky. These are not cool and trendy shows that wanted your attention. This is the equivalent of the weird kid trying to fit in with the cool kids by changing their personality and becoming someone that they're not. This was bound to have a short shelf life because, simply put, Rocket Power was never meant to be a show for the Klasky Csupo couple in the first place. This is a weird animation company, very artsy, trying to produce what's cool and trendy rather than making what they find cool themselves. And it shows on its sleeve. Rocket Power would end July 30th, 2004, and as of this date, no new episodes or specials or TV movies are planned. Regardless of my issues with the show, I do feel a sense of nostalgia watching it again. I can't say this is my favorite of that era, or even my favorite of that year, and side note, it probably didn't help that SpongeBob took off incredibly. I guess the Rockets didn't have enough power to stay long. However, if you're looking to gaze into the mediocre of the 90s and relive a mixed bag of extreme sports and tough love, then give me a woogity woogity woogie and bust out those knee pads, because you're in for a wild ride. This is Alpha J, and thank you for watching. Once again, please check out verve.co/alphaj or click the link in the description or the pinned comment. You'll get a 30-day ad-free trial of Verve Premium. It's a great deal, and you'll be helping out the channel a lot, while also getting some incredible shows that may be the topic of an upcoming Rise and Fall. Special thanks to the supporters of October. And if you want to see the other Rise and Falls, click here. Until next time, guys, take care. Alpha out.